And in the season finale of Loki, as Renslayer is going over some files trying to figure out what the hell's going on, Miss Minutes shows up with the, quote, downloaded files that Renslayer requested. But when Renslayer actually looks at them, it's not at all what Renslayer requested. And Miss Minutes tells her, I know it's not what you wanted, but he thinks this will be more useful. And the he is the he who remains. Miss Minutes then disappears, and Renslayer continues to go over some files when all of a sudden her door opens up. And to her surprise, it's Mobius, back from the void. He's holding a pruning stick, but he's not planning on actually pruning her. She does apologize and say, I'm sorry, but I couldn't let you get in the way of our mission. And he says, what mission? The timekeepers are fake. We're all variants. She then calls a hunter into her office to try to take care of Mobius, but that's not going to work. And that's because Mobius, along with Hunter B-15, have blown the lid off of the farce that is the TVA. Hunter B-15 fled to Fremont, Ohio in 2018, where she was tracked down by some other hunters looking for her. But she went there with a purpose, and that's because when the hunters finally catch up to Hunter B-15, in walks Renslayer, but not the Judge Renslayer that they know. This is Principal Renslayer. This is the variant that was taken by the TVA and put to work. This proves that they're all variants. So unfortunately for Renslayer, nobody's coming to help her. Mobius tells her people are ready to hear the truth. They don't want to hear lies anymore. But Renslayer asks, well, what if it's a necessary lie? Someone created the Timekeepers. They created this place. They gave us a purpose. I have to believe they had a reason. But Mobius shakes his head and says, I've seen the horror that waits for people when they get pruned, and there's nothing necessary about that. And Renslayer asks, do you know what would happen if we didn't prune the timeline? It would be chaos. It would be death. And Mobius cuts her off and says, you mean free will? And Renslayer kind of laughs and tells him, only one person gets free will, and that's the person in charge. They then get into a little bit of a spat of who betrayed who, and then Renslayer grabs her tempad and opens up a doorway. But before she goes, Mobius tells her, hey, don't go yet. Maybe we can build this thing into something better. Together, we can do that. But Renslayer just shakes her head and says, no, I'm sorry, Mobius. So Mobius activates the pruning stick and says, I can't just let you go. But he's going to have to, because when he gets close to Renslayer, she's able to disarm him pretty easily. He figures that she's once again going to prune him, but she doesn't. She just drops the stick and tells him, I'm going in search of free will. And then she goes through the doorway. And free will can be found at the Citadel at the end of time. And that is where Loki and Sylvie have shown up. When they walk through the doorway, though, they're not greeted by a person. They're greeted by Miss Minutes. She tells both of them that he who remains is really impressed with the fact that they got this far, and he's willing to make a deal with them. He's willing to put them back on the timeline and give them everything they ever wanted. So for Loki, that means being able to beat the Avengers, get the Infinity Stones, even kill Thanos. And for Sylvie, who's been alone her whole life, that means having a life full of good memories. But Sylvie says, no, that'd be fake. We write our own destiny now. And Miss Minutes kind of chuckles and says, oh, sure you do. And then she disappears. They continue to walk through this dark citadel when all of a sudden an elevator door opens up, and inside of it is He Who Remains. And he's actually quite excited to see Loki and Sylvie. He invites them up to his office so that they can talk, and in the elevator, Sylvie tries to kill him right then and there, but he's able to avoid her. She tries a second time, and he's once again able to avoid her. This is going to be a trend. When they do finally arrive in his office, he gives them coffee, because he's polite, and then sits them down. Shortly after they sit down, though, Sylvie once again tries to kill him. And after she goes 0 for 3, that's when He Who Remains decides to show her why he's able to avoid being killed. It's because he knows everything that's going to happen. At first, they think it's just a parlor trick, but he just repeats that it's not a parlor trick, he just knows it all. He's also seen it all. So everything on Lamentis, he saw it. Everything the TVA didn't, he saw it. And Sylvie scoffs at all of this and says, no, we broke out of your little game. That's how we got here. And He Who Remains says, wrong. Every step that you've taken, I paved the way. You guys just walked on the road. They're visibly annoyed, and he points out that I have the rest of everything that's going to happen. There's really only one way this can go. And Sylvie asks the question, then why are we here? And He Who Remains tells her that the journey, is important. At this point, it seems like Sylvie and Loki are finally willing to listen to He Who Remains. And he tells them, I understand your objections to what the TVA does. And honestly, yeah, my methods are deceptive. But the mission never was. Reality is, without me and the TVA, everything burns. He then gets into his backstory. He doesn't give them his name, but he does tell them that a long time ago, way before the TVA, a variant of himself lived on Earth in the 31st century. That variant was a scientist that discovered that there were universes stacked on top of his own. At the exact same time, other versions of themselves were learning the exact same thing. Eventually, they made contact, and at first there was peace. It was narcissistic, but it was peace nonetheless. They shared technology, they shared knowledge, they shared it all. But he tells them that not every version of him was so pure of heart. And for some people, new worlds meant only one thing, meant new lands to conquer. Next thing you know, it was all-out war, each variant fighting to preserve their own universe while trying to annihilate all the other variants. This war was almost the end of everything. But that's when the first variant from the 31st century encountered Alioth. He was able to weaponize Alioth and end the multiversal war. After that, he just isolated the timeline they're in now, and then he was able to just manage the flow of time. This helped him prevent any further branches, and then the TVA kept it in check. He looks at them both and says, I keep you guys safe, and if you think I'm evil, just wait till you meet my variants. You may hate the dictator, but something far worse is going to fill the void if you get rid of him. And trust me, I've gone through every scenario. This is the only way that it works. Loki asks, so you just continue to prune innocent timelines? And he says, no, you two would. He wants them to actually run it all. He's been trying to find the right person to take his spot. Now he's got two of them sitting right in front of him. And the reason why he wants to give up control is because he's tired. He's lived a long time and he's just kind of over it. So they have two options. They could either take it over or they could kill him and the sacred timeline is completely exposed. This will likely bring on a multiversal war. But Sylvie doesn't trust him at all. She can't get over the fact that he, quote, treated real people's lives as a game. But as he's talking, all of a sudden he gets really, really distracted. He says aloud, we just crossed the threshold. Then he picks up a pen and drops it and chuckles and tells them that he kind of lied earlier. He knew everything that was going to happen up to a certain point. That point has since passed. But at this point, he has no idea what's going to happen. And he seems kind of excited about that. Loki asks him, this is it? This is how the end of time's going to go? You sit there with all that freedom and then you're going to let us decide your fate? And he excitedly proclaims, yeah. I mean, what's the worst that can happen? You either take over my life's work or you kill me and an infinite amount of me ends up showing up to try to replace me. Sylvie feels like this is yet another manipulation, but he reassures her this is no manipulation. He then takes off his bracelet, and his bracelet is his control panel. It controls everything. Sylvie, though, is done. She's ready to just get this over with and kill him. But as she goes to plunge the blade into his heart, Loki stops her, which takes her aback. He wants to actually talk about this, because he thinks that he who remains is telling the truth. Sylvie, though, can't figure out exactly what there is to think about. This is what they came for. And that's when she looks at Loki and says, oh, I get it. You want the throne. And he says, no, that's not it at all. The universe is in the balance. Look, I know the TVA hurt us both, but what if by taking him out, we unleash something even worse? She doesn't really respond to that, though, and says, what was I thinking trusting you? Has all of this been a con? And Loki takes offense to that and says, really? Is that honestly what you think of me? Yeah, you're right. No, evil Loki's plan finally came together. Well, you know what? You never trusted me, did you? I mean, can't you see that this is bigger than our experience? And what Sylvie can't understand is why they're not seeing this the same way. And Loki points out it's because you can't trust and I can't be trusted. Sylvie once again tries to kill He Who Remains, and Loki once again tries to defend him. They go back and forth, with Sylvie still convinced that Loki wants to kill her to take the throne, and Loki continuing to tell her that's not the case. Sylvie does end up kicking Loki aside and getting really close to beheading He Who Remains, but Loki gets in the way at the last minute. He tells her, stop. I don't want to hurt you. I don't want a throne. I just want you to be okay. They finally kiss. It's a touching moment, but as they're kissing, Sylvie grabs that power bracelet, opens up a doorway, and tells him, I'm not you, and then kicks him back to the TVA. Now it's just Sylvie and He Who Remains, and she expects him to beg for his life, but he doesn't. He's actually laughing. She plunges the dagger into his heart, and he looks at her, smiles, and says, I'll see you soon. And then he dies. But Sylvie doesn't really seem satisfied like she thought she would. And as she's sitting there, wondering why she doesn't feel better, the timeline is branching off at a rapid rate. And back at the TVA, they're not doing anything about it. Hunter B-15 and Mobius have actually agreed not to turn back. They are full steam ahead with this multiverse. But in his heart of hearts, Loki feels like this was the wrong decision. He rushes to find Mobius, and he does. He finds Mobius along with Hunter B-15. And when he finds them, they're talking about the 63 new branches that have just branched out. Hunter B-15 doesn't understand exactly what He Who Remains wants them to do, and Mobius doesn't figure out how they could even stop it. And that's when Loki yells, we can't. He walks up to him and tells him, it's done. We made a terrible mistake. We freed the timeline. We found him beyond the storm. There's a citadel at the end of time. That's where he lives, and he planned everything. He's seen everything. He knows everything. Look, this is complicated, but somebody's coming. Countless different versions of a very dangerous person. All of them, by the way, are set on war. We need to prepare for this. But Mobius cuts him off and says, take it easy, man. You're an analyst, right? What division are you from? And Loki's confused, but that's when he realizes Mobius doesn't know who he is. Mobius starts asking him, who are you? What's your name? And Hunter B15 is calling for backup. And that's when Loki looks up, and instead of the towers that used to be there with just a cloaked hidden figure, instead they've been replaced by statues of He Who Remains. And that is the end of Loki Season 1. Thank you so much for getting this part of the recap. And that is the end of Loki Season 1. Thank you so much for getting this part of the recap. Please consider subscribing to the channel. That would be cool. Hit thumbs up if you liked it. Smash that thumbs down button if you thought this sucked. I have merch. Go buy a sticker. That'd be cool. You know, I got bills to pay. And be nice in the comment section. I try not to read the comments, but it seems like every time I do, I see that one nasty comment. It ruins my day. Makes me feel bad. If you don't like it, just hit thumbs down. Keep moving. Oh, and don't forget, sharing is caring. Hit that share button. Share it on your social media pages. Let them ads run, because once again, I have bills to pay. But thank you so much for checking out this recap.